Oh, that one. Okay. I would like to call this meeting to order. Any disclosure of interest? We have a presentation from Mr. Fritz Beck. Mr. Beck, if you would like to take the podium up here, that would be great. Joe, if you could make sure that that one's on.
Thank you. Thank you, Hellier. Thank you very much, Mr. Hellier. First of all, really privileged to be here on such short notice. This is all the arrangements of Mayor Luke, who's been just absolutely supportive on my presentation today. This situation only arose just over a week ago. In the interim, he's already been to my house for one meeting and has made arrangements for me to make this presentation this morning, which I feel affects our community on the whole. So good morning, and again I'd like to thank Mayor Luke for arranging for me to be here this morning. The Police Services Board, thank you very much for being here. I appreciate your allowing me to make this presentation because it concerns you as individuals. About myself, my name is Fritz Beck. I live in the villages of Port Rowan. My wife and I have been in the Long Point area, Port Rowan, for over 45 years. We owned a trailer cottage at Long Point, so it was a sure fit for us to retire here. I retired as a platoon chief in the City of London and as a professional firefighter for 35 years. During that time, I worked in conjunction with the London Police Department, the OPP detachment out of the London detachment in hundreds of emergency situations. I had a great respect and a great working relationship with the OPP detachment and the London Police Department and all EMS departments. On April the 12th, there was a meeting held at my house. Mayor Luke attended, as did many business representatives from our community. The OPP detachment was invited. Through talking to Staff Sergeant Fashing, somehow there was a miscommunication. It was directed to his office. I had spoken with his secretary. I'd left a voicemail. Somehow there was a miscommunication. Unfortunately, their representation wasn't there. It would have been very beneficial. It was to our loss, all our loss. Also unable to make it today, who really wanted to make it, was Bobby Ann Brady from Mr. Toby Barrett's office. She really wished she could be here this morning. I had a lengthy conversation with her after Staff Sergeant Fashing and I had a great conversation 2 days ago. After that, I had a lengthy conversation with her, and she's asked me, wanted to be here. She has a personal issue to attend to today, so she can't make it. She's asked me to forward this presentation to her afterwards and a follow-up regarding the outcome of the meeting. She's informed me that their objectives out of her office will be to review these concerns and then take them to the minister, and hopefully we can go forward with it beyond Mr. Barrett. I'm sure this board, now this is what it's about, is all aware of the 8 break-ins we had recently. Maybe these individuals probably are not. From April the 12th, April the 8th to April the 12th in Port Rowan, we had 8 break-ins. To name a few, the Esso gas station, service station in town, the trailer compound right across the road, the Methodist church, a shop that was hit for $25,000 in tools. The criminals then, at that particular location, burnt the John Deere Gator tractor that they had stolen, burnt it on premises. My own personal trailer loss of $5,000, which was not insured. This is my 5th break-in in 7 years living in Port Rowan, personally. I live in the villages of Port Rowan, and many of the other residents there have had their vehicles vandalized, their property vandalized, the lawnmower stolen. They don't call. That's a mistake. They should call about every single incident so we can have these individuals apprehended, and our police force will understand how serious this issue is in Port Rowan. To the Esso gas station. On that particular weekend, they broke into the Esso gas station, this is not the first break-in for the Esso gas station. 200 yards across the road where the mini putt used to be, there's a trailer storage compound. These people break into the Esso gas station, 200 yards across the road, with no fear of being caught. They smash the bay doors, steal the tools from that location. those proximities, being that close, they're fearless. They're not even concerned about being caught. The individual that owns that trailer compound, that's his third break-in since August 2017. He was in Florida at the time. I had a serious, long conversation with him. He had to fly home from Florida, secure his business, and replace the tools that were lost, as he needs these tools to run his business. Each time they're replaced, the criminals come back, they damage his property, and they steal his equipment. Does that sound like an individual that wants to maintain his business in Port Rowan, as the rest of the business owners feel the same? The second trailer compound in Port Rowan that has had more than one break-in, this is where my locked trailer was stolen. The owner there has the individual on video surveillance, and our Police Services Board knows about these situations. Each time, as well as the Methodist Church, I understand, and I cannot be 100% on this, have him on video surveillance from the previous break-ins of that weekend. Each time, the video surveillances are inconclusive. That is not for me to decide. I'm not educated on that information. But this individual and these individuals are known to town. This is another very interesting story that was brought up at the meeting at my house the other day, and Mayor Luke can attest to hearing this story. From one of our business owners, one of her neighbors had their shed broken into, and the tools were stolen accordingly out of the shed. They could not get the generator that was locked in that particular shed because they couldn't cut the chain. The owner of that property and the generator took his generator out, owns a business in Tilsonburg, and took the generator there and stored it for 6 weeks in fear of it getting stolen. After that, they felt it was safe. They returned the generator back to their shed. 1 week after it was returned, the generator was stolen. They came back with the proper tools and took the generator. This is sheer proof that these criminals are pre-planning their raids. This isn't just a hit and miss. They knew that generator had returned to its home, and they got it with the right equipment. This means they're invading everyone's privacy every and any day of the week. No one is safe. We sit in our houses in fear because these individuals are in our backyard and there's never any police presence. As well, when they stole my quad in December 17, they came with the proper tools to cut the chain that it was chained to the post in my backyard, a very heavy chain. They rolled it down the hill, this individual. They smashed the ignition, attempting to hotwire and start it. They did $400 to the quad, and they didn't get to steal it. My son was home at the time. My wife and I were not. My son was in the house. This means nothing. People being at home does not deter these criminals. These crimes are being fueled for their need for drugs. These individuals are drug users. The drug problem we have in Port Rowan only compounds the problems that we face as citizens in Port Rowan. Methamphetamine is one of the individuals' prime drug, and the possibility for rehabilitation from a methamphetamine user is 6% with use and assistance from medical individuals. Without assistance, it is near zero. This stands to reason that this one issue creates the others, and neither will stop. The individuals are not going to be cured from their drug problem. The next result of these crimes is going to be personal injury to a victim that confronts these individuals during a break-in, as my son surely would have had he been awoken, but he was not. I live in a subdivision of 310 retired people. The average age is 72 years old. Someone's going to come after this individual with a broom handle, and in their drug-induced state, they're not about to say, "You caught me." They are armed with knives and break-in tools, and they're not going to be detained by any citizen. These are people that are in a drug-induced state. They do not have empathy, sympathy, or any normal moral feelings towards anyone. It is inevitable that someone is going to get seriously hurt, or the ultimate worse. These criminals, they sit at home and they monitor the location of all OPP cruisers, and they operate accordingly. They know when police constables are called to an accident scene in Langton, black ice, whatever, if it is a domestic dispute, OPP needs to dispatch 2 cruisers. That leaves us defenseless. It leaves all the surrounding areas defenseless because we do not have enough cruisers on the road. They've stolen everything from personal items, tools, generators, farm pumps, the pumps off the tractors as well. Paul Pankter, who lives down on the front road, was at the meeting the other day. He laughed at me after Mayor Luke was there for 2 hours. The meeting went very well. We thought it was well presented by Mayor Luke and the business community. He laughed and walked out, and this is the most positive individual I've ever met. He said, Fritz, they come with knives, they cut my hydraulic line. They don't even take the quick connect coupling off the quick connects on the hydraulic lines. He says they slash the tires with knives on the way by. His personal loss financially is limitless. It's endless how much he has lost to property damage. He doesn't even call anymore because there's never any response. Every break-in, an individual receives the same as I have 5 times. Here's an IR for your personal records, an incident report. Never any items are returned. There's never any follow-up phone calls. There's never any investigation update. As Paul Pankter had said, the amount of break-ins he's had, the equipment he's lost, he never gets a call back. He never has seen one single generator. They've taken several of these hydraulic pumps off his tractor. They're $2,000 a piece. They just come and cut the line. It's on their little quad trailer, and away they go. His insurance, he cannot even confront his insurance company anymore. Insurance people only allow you so many claims, as we all know. So now that I've informed this board about the crimes that you're already aware of, I'm going to address some of the concerns that our citizens have to bring forward. To say the least, it's the lack of policing in Port Rowan. We do not have any policing after dark. Here's some of the questions that need to be brought up. We know that there's 9 zones, and how is this coverage determined, and how many cruisers per zone? Is it by population, per capita, by area, by the amount of crime, etc.? Second of all, who decides the amount of coverage per zone? Who dictates that? Thirdly, how often is that reviewed, the coverage of each zone? Why is it not changed when the crime rate is up in my district? Does your department have adequate staff to cover all 9 zones at nighttime due to illness, vacation, and other staffing issues that might prevent the right amount of officers to be in cruisers at night? This is one of the most serious issues that confronts us all as business people or citizens and business owners in Port Rowan and in all districts. The issue of doubling up in cruisers at night. Are we aware what doubling up means? Doubling up means where they put 2 cruisers in 1 car, which means there's 1 less car on the road at that time. And that would mean in every district, is that right? Wherever they double up, that would mean there's 1 less cruiser in that district. It's a question.
Maybe if we could just carry on with your presentation.
Okay, sure, great,
Good.
We'll get it done, thank you.
Interactive stage.
So the issue of doubling up in cruisers at night, who decides whether they double up? If it's the shift supervisor, is he directed from above to double off officers in the cruiser? If that is the case, there's a great financial gain over the course of a year by not putting another cruiser on the road. This comes down to dollars and cents in budget. Every time you double up a cruiser, that again cuts our police protection in half. If that amount of money, if the cruisers are being doubled up, is there bonuses being paid out to management when costs are reduced? Where is that money going when cruisers are doubled up? These are some of the issues that need to be addressed. I only have 10 minutes. There's more to be addressed, and we need to resolve the outcome of this limited presentation. We as a community, with the use of the Freedom of Information Act, the provincial contacts from Mr. Toby Barrett's office, and with this Police Services Board's assistance, I'm sure we can find a solution. We have a serious problem. As I mentioned, I hadn't mentioned, but Port Rowan has added 400 homes in 20 years. That's a huge increase in the tax base. The 16% that we all pay that contributes to the police protection, we're not getting it in our zone. In closing, my wife and I, as did the residents and business owners, anticipated to work and retire in a friendly community of Port Rowan. Well, it is not that town. We as citizens expect the protection that we are paying you for. Please do not look to the public for answers. That is your responsibility. Please bring Port Rowan back to a proud place to live. Thank you all on the board here. Thank you, Police Services Board, for letting me present this.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Beck. And if you could stay there,
Sure
'cause,
will.
we have questions
Sure.
for you.
And I will ask them, I'm a little hearing impaired, if you could speak up, please.
Questions from members to Mr. Beck. Jim?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your presentation. I know recently we've had an initiative, and this is in no way taking away from the concerns that you've raised, but in the village of St. Williams, where there's been a neighborhood watch established. Do we have a similar neighborhood watch program in Port Rowan? And if not, is that something that you folks have talked about?
Yes, we do not have one, and it's not what we're looking for. Thank you very much. The Community Watch program, I'm sure, has some beneficial benefits from it. Mayor Luke tells me that since St. Williams had it, he sees reduced crime there. We know the criminals in Port Rowan. We know some of them, okay? Not all of them. So when we do a community watch, we're to direct the police services or the OPP detachment on, hey, you know, I saw someone walking the streets. There's someone, you know, that shouldn't be there. Well, our citizens don't walk the streets after midnight to begin with. Our crime is happening, well, it does happen 24 hours a day. I shouldn't say that because we've had quads stolen right out of people's laneways at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. That's how brazen these individuals are. We know the criminals in town, sir, which you're probably unaware of. This individual, one of the individuals, lives right on Main Street in Port Rowan. Another one lives in Cortland, and they do the drug trafficking after midnight. This is a known fact to the business owners and us in the community. They talk about it on a daily basis in the coffee shop. These individuals here on our Police Services Board, obviously they're aware who it is. These criminals have a free-for-all. The Community Watch program, as it may help something, I don't see it helping at all with the problem that we have going on right now. It's lack of cars on the road at nighttime. We do not have enough police to prevent what's going on. Each time that a call is made, post-crime break-in, the officer comes the following day. Never that night. It's always the day after. Again, they don't investigate the crime at the time. They come the next day, investigate it, find my quad. Actually, it was 2 days after they came for my quad and give me my incident report number. So the Community Watch program, thank you. I'm not going to say no to it, but it's not what's going to stop our problem. Thank you. Anything else?
Other questions for Mr. Beck? Lisa, what do you have to say?
First of all, just as Mr. Oliver did, I certainly want to thank you, Mr. Beck,
Thank you.
for coming forward. And I think you've had some conversations with Staff Sergeant Fashing as well.
Correct.
I want to try to stick to, I know your community's frustrated. I can tell you, without divulging ongoing investigations that we have on the go, it's hard to speak to you to tell you exactly what's in the works because we don't want to threaten those investigations. But our street crimes unit is currently active in that area and active on the investigation and what's going on in the area. We also have, I believe you started a focus patrol, haven't you, John? So we have a focus patrol that's specifically targeting the nighttime hours. I can certainly tell you we are in Port Rowan at night. I don't want to speak to a lot of the nevers and things that you were talking about. I think a lot of that, I don't want to speak for you, but I think a lot of that comes from frustration because we are present in Port Rowan during the night. And we would certainly be able to have the statistics to back that up and to show you how often we are on Port Rowan and exactly what we're doing. And I don't know if we've offered to sit down with Mr. Beck to do that. Okay. To show you exactly what our policing is in your area, how often we spend there. There was a number of different questions that you
Yes.
had in your presentation, so I don't know if we want to start going through those questions and moving through, or...
I'd just like to respond to yours, if I could, your statement.
Point of order. I don't know how you're going to handle it here at the board, Mr. Chair, but typically when we've received a presentation or a deputation, that person is excused from the podium so that we don't get into debates back and forth either between myself as a board member and the deputation or between our staff. So that's just a suggestion. You're going to decide, but what I don't want to see happen is our staff end up getting into a back and forth debate with this person. Questioning that, Mr. Chairman. I'm just saying perhaps you may choose to excuse the deputation so that there cannot be then the back and forth as the superintendent attends to it.
And truly, I have no issue putting together what our activities and what we are doing in Port Rowan. I certainly didn't, I had no idea what Mr. Beck was going to say here today or put forward to us. But I can certainly put that together in a package for the next Police Services Board so that you actually do know what our activities are ongoing in Port Rowan. There's a number of different things that Mr. Beck is citing. And again, without knowing what our statistics and everything else are, the number of patrol hours we have there, the number of officers we have there, the response time, there's been suggestions that we never respond. There's never follow-up. There's a lot of different things in there that I know in myself and the character of our officers that don't always happen. And I'd like to have some answers as to if it has happened, why it's happened. The policing in the Port Rowan area is the same as what we have in all the other communities that we have. Like I say, the street crimes unit with this specific incident, with these specific break-ins, we do have an ongoing investigation in relation to each and every one of them. Without speaking to what that investigation status is, I can tell you that we do have that ongoing.
Can I respond?
Yeah, thanks. So I think that we will await the inspector's response and see what is actually happening in Port Rowan. And
I had one more thing to add that's very important.
Okay.
In response to that, in 2013, when my boathouse was broken into, they broke into my 7 boathouses in 2013. So now we have a culmination of what's going on. They took multiple things out of my boathouse, about $2,000 worth of equipment. electronics and whatnot. It was right before opening day of bass season. I had a sit down with Mayor Travell, Councillor Cheney, and an inspector from your department at that time. I got nowhere. I got exactly what this gentleman indicated here today, and this board is giving me. Please, Mr. Beck, that's enough. Be quiet. We're going to let them deal with it. No one wants to hear me. That particular meeting I had, they couldn't wait for me to exit the room. It was very uncomfortable. All they did was let me have my spiel. It was in the room over there. I got nothing. As I say, I never got no call back. I never got no response. 1 week after they broke into my boathouse, in that boathouse was a brand new $400 snowblower that was a gift for my son. They come in under the boathouse door through the water, so you people can be aware how good they are. 1 week later, they broke 4 locks to get into my boathouse with the pickup truck side. I had moved the snowblower. They cased the place, saw my snowblower, came back a month later. It wasn't a week later, sorry, it was a month or 6 weeks later. To get my snowblower, it was gone. But they damaged the 4 locks, damaged the door. My end result was I got nothing from it. Port Rowan got nothing from it. I got the same answer that this board's giving me today. We're going to leave it over here. I got the same thing from the inspector in the room that day. Mr. Beck, it's an ongoing investigation. I didn't ask. Staff Sergeant Fashing will attest when we discussed on the phone on Monday. I'm not asking what you're doing. That is not my job. I never once asked what you're going to do. That's not my job. I came here today to make this presentation to make you people aware of what's going on. Sir, you're unaware of what's going on in Port Rowan. This isn't just something that happened on the weekend. This is happening all the time. I'll stop. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for your presentation, and thank you for bringing us up to date on that, and we will follow it up with the inspector. And
thank you for your time.
any further comments on this? Jim?
Mr. Chair, I thought our inspector was going to perhaps give us an update or a review while the deputation may still be in the chamber with us on deployment and vehicles and the doubling up he talked about. It would be of interest to me if we could do that now while we're in the public part of our meeting.
Are you able to respond to that? Like, do you know that the answer to Mr. Oliver's question?
It's like I was saying before, there's a number of different concerns and questions that were brought up by the deputation. A lot of it has to do with process and how we do things. Perhaps what I would suggest would be in relation to our policing activities in Port Rowan. I don't want to give Mr. Beck the impression at all that we're trying to make him go away, because we're not. A lot of the premise of the conversations that we have is we want the community to come forward. We want them to have an interest, a passion in their own community to bring issues forward to the police. We want to have those ongoing communications. So what I would like to do with this is be able to come back at the next Police Services Board and actually inform both the Police Services Board and Mr. Beck what exactly our activities are in that area. Because like I say, I think there is a lot of frustration in relation to the lack of, and I know that we are in that area, and I would like to show him that. The other thing is even meeting with Mr. Beck between now and the next Police Services Board so that they can sit down with us.
I'm sorry, I can't hear.
To have that conversation and see what it is we can do together, because truly there is no issue, and I know Mr. Beck may not want to hear this, but there is no issue that is solely a police issue. There has to be some type of community involvement in that issue, and perhaps we can help in how that community involvement can be and how we can work together with police, because we certainly can't be, this is a police issue, this is what the community is doing. We need to have ongoing communications to be able to do that. So I can prepare that for the next Police Services Board. In the meantime, Staff Sergeant Fashing and myself can certainly sit down with Mr. Beck at the detachment. I don't want you to get the impression at all that we're trying to make you go away. I want community members to come forward that are passionate about the safety of their community, which you've done. But we do need to sit down and have those answers to your questions, because I have no problem at all providing you the answers to your questions. It's just a rather lengthy list of things to go through, but we can certainly do that.
I was looking forward to going through it today. This was only to make you aware.
Yeah. So we'll do that follow-up with Mr. Beck. I'll prepare those numbers for the next Police Services Board. And then if we want to talk about any of the concerns the board have with the process or the doubling up, we can certainly address those now, if that's what you wish, Mr. Chair.
Jim?
Mr. Chairman, I've heard exactly what I was hoping to hear from the inspector, and I think I'm quite happy to have us get an update at the next board meeting. But the other thing that she said that I want the deputation to still hear is even before it came to the board, and we have issues that are brought to the board's attention, we ask the detachment to implement focus patrols, and they do. They've already done that in this case based on the incidents that happened. So I'm quite happy with the response that we're getting from staff, and they're doing a focus patrol in response already at their own initiative, and we'll get an update next meeting. So I'm okay with that. Thank you.
And it has been, just to add to that, it is a priority investigation that's ongoing with our street crimes unit, and the focus patrol we've actually dedicated to, I think it's after 1 o'clock in the morning, into the late night hours, and having the presence in that community as well. So we will be able to, with this focus patrol, obviously, as you know, we report back as to what our activities were in that area, how many hours we've spent, and so on and so forth. In relation to the doubling up, we do have, after 10 o'clock at night, all of our officers have the option of doubling up, and it's actually a directive through, not necessarily our organization, but through an association standpoint of officers having the opportunity to double up for officer safety during a certain hour.
Any other questions? Charlie?
Just a comment for the board. I was certainly invited last Thursday to Mr. Beck and Mrs. Beck's home, and there was about 18 citizens there. And just so you know, I listened to them, and many of the questions that were brought here, Mr. Chair, by the deputation, Mr. Beck, were directed at me, and I certainly was in no position to answer operational stuff. So on that basis, I said he's best to bring this forward to the board. And I can also say to the board that I wasn't aware, as you, of this situation that we heard about today in the Port Rowan community. And even one of the community business leaders was in attendance, and that person expressed that they were not aware that this had been going on. So I'm not surprised that none of us really are aware of this continuing break and enter. And so I just wanted to share that with the board.
Well, I mean, it does point to one aspect of the statistics, that we get aggregate break-ins every month, but we don't get it segregated, so that if there is a hot spot like Port Rowan, we don't know about it. So other than someone coming. So I think that's fair enough that the follow-up that you're going to do on it. Also, I mean, he's made a lot of allegations about particular residents of Port Rowan and possible criminal activity, and that's a big one too. So whether there are people there who are well known to police, and whether it's drawing false aspersions against other residents. So I think that the best response is that you look into it and find out what's happening and bring back what can be told in public, and possibly even what can't be told in public too, so that we know that action is being taken.
Mr. Chair, if I may comment, I can assure you that there's a significant amount of investigative action that's taking place. I'd be remiss if I disclosed what those actions were. I would simply be doing a disservice to our members that are out there trying to deal with this in the most effective way. And just to comment, we are aware of the situation. As you know, we rely heavily on analytics, and we have our analysts looking at what's going on in the county at all times. And I can speak a little bit to what's been happening in Port Rowan. I can tell you that in January of 2018, we had a total of 3 property crimes, 0 break-and-enters, 1 theft under, 1 fraud, and 1 mischief call. In February, we had 2 break-and-enters total for property crimes, and in March, we had 3 break-and-enters and 2 mischief calls for a total of 5 property-related occurrences.
In 3 months?
So the total property crimes 2018 for January, February, and March are 10. And that includes break-and-enters, theft unders, frauds, and mischiefs.
And I'm still confused. This is all in Port Rowan, though?
This is within Port Rowan.
Okay.
Yeah. So recognizing that, and we are aware of some of the element within the town, and there is a great deal of investigative action that's taking place. Again, I don't want to comment on exactly what it is, and I can assure you that, as the inspector alluded to in terms of focus patrol, we're committed to being there at the right time.
Thank you. Any other questions? Obviously, this is a real hot button for Port Rowan, so. Okay, well, thank you, and thank you for the indulgence on this presentation, because it was on short notice, and didn't really know what he was going to say either, so. If we could carry on, the minutes of March 21st, any errors or omissions? I have one question there's use of abbreviations. One is CAIA and one is DL on page 3 of the Focus Patrol report. What does that mean? Yeah, it would be on page 3 of 46, and it would be under title HSD Big 4. When you get to the final paragraph, it says the charges break down as follows: speeding 55, other HTA 9, CAIA 8, DL related 2. I don't know what you mean by CAIA, and I don't know what you mean by DL, and I wasn't sure whether any independent reader would either, so.
Yeah, I think what I've done is I've provided Maureen with my speaking notes more than anything else. So those acronyms certainly make sense to me, but perhaps if I send them off to Maureen from now on, I'll put it what it is. So HTA is Highway Traffic Act. CAIA is the Compulsory Automobile Insurance Act. So those would be insurance-related charges. DL is driver's license, so that would be somebody perhaps that's unlicensed or has a conditional requirement on their license that they're not satisfying. Sorry about that, Mr. Chair.
I'm just going to put down insurance for CAI. Yeah. Wow, okay. Any other questions or comments on the minutes? Could I have a motion to adopt? Moved by Charlie, seconded by Dave Murphy. All in favor? Thank you. Any business arising? Inspector,
I did have some follow-up, I believe, from item 5A there. It was the Angling Road speed spy. So we were able to get out and erect the speed spy units out there. We had them out from the 3rd to the 5th of April. We recorded the speed of over 3,000 vehicles within that time frame on that stretch of road. So what we had was a northbound average speed at 63 kilometers per hour, and 27% of the vehicles were traveling at least 20 kilometers per hour over the speed limit. Southbound, the average speed was 59 kilometers per hour, with 24% of the vehicles traveling at least 20 kilometers per hour over the speed limit. As a result of those, we do have an issue with speeding on that road that we have initiated a focus patrol on and is currently running right now as well. Since we had the results, it's been ongoing and running. So we'll be able to report the next time on the results of that focus patrol. But again, thanks to the member of the public as well that brought that to our attention, and we were able to go up and put up those units and do some enforcement in that area. So we'll report back on that. I think that's the only old business from the minutes that we had.
Questions for the inspector on that? No, and thanks for following up on that. It obviously it was driven by a second complaint or inquiry from a member of the public, and it's nice to see that there is response and that her inquiry had some basis. So seems to me that it's all good. So, John, do you have something?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just in conjunction with that as well, we had the opportunity to borrow a speed sign from a neighboring county, and we had it set out there for a period of time as well. So certainly our complainant in this matter was aware of that.
Any other questions? Any other business arising? Seeing none, if we could move on to correspondence. Any questions or comments on 6A? Any questions or comments on 6B? Any, Jim, on 6C, do you want to introduce that and see what the inspector's response is?
Mr. Chair,
Sorry, John.
excuse me, sorry to interrupt. Just on the issue of 6A, I believe the letter from the Simcoe and District Real Estate Board, or 6B, sorry.
6B, okay.
I just wanted to let the board know that I did in fact respond to the concerns from Mr. Van Londersel, and we were able to sort out what the issue was, and we got clarification on it.
Good. Well, thank you. 6C is an email about enforceability of access to cannabis for medical purposes regulations. Jim, do you have any comment on that? Or?
Well, Mr. Chair, I do, but I also see there's some information in on our red pages in that same regard. So was that, I wasn't sure whether that was something that was targeted to be discussed in the in-camera session or not.
What I said to the inspector was that whatever she could respond to in public on this particular item, that she should respond to, and then whatever has to be carried forward to in-camera, we'll do that too.
Okay,
So-
well then in that case, maybe I could just set the stage a little bit, Mr. Chair, and I'm sure Mayor Luke will jump in if I leave things out, and I probably will, but the whole issue of the access to marijuana for medical and ultimately recreational purposes, we know starting in the summer continues to be an important issue for council. We've established our new bylaw to try and deal with setbacks, and ultimately we'll have a new bylaw to deal with odor control as well, which I think the public are happy about. One of the things that was potentially going to be the Achilles heel in all of this, though, and it was an issue that I raised at the council meeting when we were talking about our new bylaw provisions, is what right do we have, either as the county through our bylaw officers or through our OPP, what rights do we have based on a complaint to go onto a property and, if you like, inspect to determine how much marijuana is being produced and whether that's in accordance with either licenses or registrations that have been issued on that property. And so that's part of why I asked Maureen to forward this information from the Health Canada folks to the board today so we could have some discussion about it. They seem to be saying that law enforcement does have the right to do so. And yet when I raised it at our council meeting, the response I got from our chief bylaw officer was that we might require a search warrant from a court to go and actually do such an inspection, even though that is in no way implied from what came from Health Canada. So I think there's still, at least for me, Mr. Chair, some confusion as to what enforcement rights we as OPP have relative to trying to deal with this issue as it unfolds. So I appreciate that we're going to have some discussion now. We can get informed by staff, and there may be some questions. So that's it. Thank you.
So, Inspector, what can you say about warrant requirements for inspecting these places?
That's one of the reasons that we had Staff Sergeant Varga attend today, because he's actually up in our HQ, because he's really our resident guru. I have my own documents and things, but I think what I'll do is let Staff Sergeant Varga actually speak to the issue, and then I'll add my piece as well.
At this point, I think it's best that we leave the answer to all the questions to the in-camera session. There are certain investigative matters that I don't think should be made public at this time.
Okay, no, that's fair enough. I mean, the only thing I would like to alert the board to is that we got this yesterday, courtesy of the detachment, and it's a municipal guide to cannabis legalization, and it's recent. The number of things that will be coming at the municipality is just about endless, with no suggestions of what draft legislation should be, or things that basically they're throwing it all back. And I mean, we've dealt with some, and it looks like there's going to be a lot more that has to be dealt with too. So I'm okay with leaving the enforcement aspects of this to in camera, and I guess we'll proceed with that as long as the rest of the board have the responses that they would like. They can be made public on Mr. Wright's email. And I guess my suggestion is that I probably should draft a response to him, and once we know what can be made public and what can't. If that sounds reasonable. Go ahead, Charlie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I certainly look forward to our conversation in closed session. Excuse me, just to dovetail on on Jim Oliver's, he certainly is correct. We did pass the bylaw with some on the marijuana, the grow ops on March 27th from council. Just to update the board where we're moving ahead is the 20-day appeal period. We're right smack in the middle of it. It does not start the 20 days the evening that council passes the amendment to our zoning bylaw. It starts on the day it's posted in the local press, and it was posted the first week of April. So at this point, as of this morning, there is no objections yet from the public. The appeal period is over April 30th. There were no speakers during the public meeting opposing the amendments from that council had put forth in the bylaw. So I've had a discussion with Mr. Anslin, our chief bylaw enforcer, and he still is not 100% clear on how we will proceed if once the period of we cannot enforce our bylaw until obviously the objection period is over. So it's not just totally clear. Certainly the main components of the amendment to the bylaw, as Mr. Oliver has told us, Mr. Chair, is some changes in setback requirements. These operations are allowed at present in the agriculture and in the industrial zones. The other thing that will come into play is that this level 2 grow-op, as we call it, I'm not talking about the big operations such as American and Golden Leaf, etc. The other issue is, of course, a site plan is required. So now we're into a whole new area of, if you have established something now, and we know they're out there, practically all of them, I'm not aware of any of them that have a site plan approved. So then the whole question of legal nonconformance comes in, and so I'm not going to get into that debate right now as to what will constitute, because the zoning bylaw was passed, I believe, in July of 2016. here we are almost 2 years later. So there's a whole question of when did your operation start? Because prior to that date, you did not need site plan approval or et cetera, et cetera. That'll be interesting. Anyhow, that's just, I don't want to belabor this, but that's where the county is at the moment, sort of going through this one step at a time and seeing how this will all unfold. And as Jim has mentioned, Mr. Chair, the other key component is staff has been directed to put together a bylaw to deal with odor control. And that is not in place yet. It's not even come back to council, but it will. Thank you.
Any other questions on this? Inspector?
Just one comment that I think we can put in the public realm is in doing some of our background, I did get a referral from our organized crime branch for a national compliance and enforcement section of the Office of Medical Cannabis that provides a contact number for the public to make any inquiries with them with their direct enforcement section. And I can just put that email out to the public here. So it's cmc@hc-sc.gc.ca. So cmc@hc-sc.gc.ca. And that's an email that's directly to the National Compliance and Enforcement Section for the Office of Medical Cannabis for Public Use email.
Thank you, Inspector. Any other questions or comments? If we could move on to questions or comments on 6D. Seeing none, if we could have 6A to 6D adopted as information. Moved by Jim, seconded by Carol. All in favor? Thank you. City Inspector's report.
And good morning again, everyone. I just want to start off with some updates on, before we get to the actual statistics and things, just some current status. We do have 2 checks to be submitted. I think we need from the police auctions that need to be submitted. I think we just need a...
Okay, you should go and grab them this time because I took off with it last month, so.
So ones, John, if we might just want to read those in.
So how much is it for? And we'll get a motion.
I think there was a document I need on the back of that as well.
Do you want an abacus?
Oh, here it is.
Okay, could I have a motion to accept 22362 into our proceeds of crime fund? Moved by Dave, seconded by Charlie. All in favor? And don't give me the check. So, Lisa, if we could carry on, please.
Okay, and just an update on 2 other cash exhibits that we have. So we had 2 matters that had gone through the court that were in relation to possession of property obtained by crime. So it's theft unders and things like that. Both of them are in relation to break-and-enters or break-ins to vehicles that have been processed through the court, people charged, and there was an amount of money that was recovered from the individuals upon request, on their arrest. Since those have now gone through court, that money has been deemed proceeds of crime. So what we're looking at is distribution of that money. In one, it was $100.11. The other one was $67.70. In the one, I've approved to have that money dispersed between all the victims and distributed back to them evenly. In the other case, we cannot find or locate the individual that was the victim or identify who the victim would be. And that money we will be putting back to the Police Services Board once we have the paperwork in order to bring back to you. So I just wanted to report on those two as well.
Looks like everybody is okay with that, so.
Just to give some updates as to what we've kind of been working on in the past month or so. We've been started up a mental health and addictions working group. Now this is in conjunction and this is chaired by NGH as well as CAMHS. And it is directly under the LIN number 4, so it's a subgroup and approved by the LIN on the healthcare side. What it is really a working group of the police and all of our community stakeholders in addiction and mental health to look at goals, identify issues that we need to deal with, and try to get both the police and the community on the same path with what we're doing for public safety in Norfolk itself. So that just went to the LIN for approval, and we've received approval to continue with that working group that I think is going to be very profitable for us in the community as we move forward.
Jim?
Very much, and thank you for that. Inspector, can you just describe